The metal detector beeped 3 times, sharp, piercing, each beep louder than the last. Sarah Chen stood frozen in the security checkpoint, her hands raised slightly, palms open. The guard's eyes narrowed. He was a tall man with a gray mustache and a uniform that looked too tight around the shoulders. Behind him, 2 more guards appeared from a side door. Their boots clicked against the marble floor in perfect rhythm. "Empty your pockets," the first guard said. His voice was calm, but Sarah heard something else underneath. Suspicion, maybe fear. She pulled out her phone, her wallet, a pen. Her press badge swung from the lanyard around her neck, the photo catching the fluorescent light overhead. Journalist, International News Network. The credentials that should have made this easier. They didn't. The guard waved a handheld scanner over her body. It beeped again near her collar. He stopped. His hand moved toward her jacket. "What's this?" he asked. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew exactly what it was. A tiny recording device, no bigger than a button, sewn into the fabric near her shoulder. Standard equipment for investigative journalists working in dangerous territories. Insurance, protection, evidence. But here, in this building, with these guards staring at her like she'd brought a weapon, it felt different. "It's just a mic," she said quietly. "For recording, I'm a journalist." The guard's jaw tightened. He reached out and touched the fabric, feeling the small bump beneath the cloth. His fingers pressed harder. Then he looked up at her face, studying her eyes like he was searching for lies. "Recording devices are not permitted," he said, "before you continue watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss stories like this one. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends." Sarah had flown 14 hours to get here. Changed planes twice. Spent 3 weeks arranging this interview through back channels and careful negotiations. The man she'd come to meet didn't speak to Western journalists. He avoided cameras, controlled information the way a dam controls water, letting only trickles through. But he'd agreed to meet her. 1 interview, 30 minutes. That was all she needed. Now that chance was slipping away. "I can remove it," Sarah offered. Her voice stayed steady even though her hands wanted to shake. "I'll leave it with security. You can hold it until I leave." The guard shook his head. He spoke into a radio clipped to his shoulder. Static crackled. A voice responded in a language Sarah didn't understand. The words were fast, urgent. Around her, the lobby continued moving. Men in suits walked past, briefcases in hand. A woman in heels clicked by, talking on her phone. Nobody looked at Sarah. Nobody stopped. It was as if invisible walls had gone up around her and the guards. The second guard stepped closer. He was younger, with dark eyes that wouldn't meet hers. He held out a plastic bag. "Remove the device," he said. "Now." Sarah's fingers fumbled with her jacket. She found the small microphone, pulled at the thread holding it in place. The fabric tore slightly. The mic came free, warm from being against her skin. She dropped it into the bag. The guard sealed it, wrote something on a label, and he turned and walked away. Sarah stood there, breathing shallow breaths, waiting. The first guard watched her without blinking. His radio crackled again. More voices. More static. Then he said the words that made her stomach drop. "The interview is canceled. 3 weeks of work. It's 14 hours of flying. Years of building contacts and trust in this region. All of it gone in 3 beeps of a metal detector." But Sarah didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. What happened next would change everything she thought she understood about truth, power, and the cost of asking questions nobody wanted to answer. Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came out. The guard was already turning away, speaking into his radio again. The lobby felt colder suddenly, like someone had opened a door to winter. "Wait," she finally managed. "Please, can I speak to someone?" There must be no exceptions. The guard's back was to her now. "You must leave the building." Behind her, Sarah heard footsteps. Heavy ones. She turned to see 2 more security personnel approaching. They weren't rushing, but they weren't casual either. Their hands rested near their belts. Their faces showed nothing. This wasn't a discussion anymore. It was an escort. Sarah's mind raced. She thought about the months of emails, the phone calls at odd hours, the careful wording required to even get this appointment. The man she'd come to interview was known by many names in many circles. Some called him a visionary, others called him dangerous. He'd built an empire in a country where asking questions could get you disappeared, and he'd agreed to talk to her. To tell his side of a story the world had only heard in whispers. Now, she was being walked out like a criminal. The guards flanked her on both sides. They moved through the lobby in silence. Every step echoed. Sarah's press badge bounced against her chest. She caught glimpses of herself in the polished marble walls. She looked smaller than she felt. Tired. The fluorescent lights made her skin look pale. Outside, the afternoon sun hit her face like a slap. The heat was immediate and thick. Cars moved past on the wide boulevard. People walked with umbrellas for shade. Life continued like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something Sarah couldn't quite name yet. One of the guards handed her the plastic bag with her microphone inside. His expression softened for just a moment. "You should go back to your hotel," he said quietly. "It's better this way." Better for who? Sarah wanted to ask. But the guard was already walking back inside. The glass doors closing behind him with a soft hiss. She stood on the steps, holding the bag, watching traffic. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. A message from her editor. "Any update? Network wants to know if we're running the interview tomorrow." Sarah stared at the screen. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard. What could she say? That she'd failed? That 3 years of investigative work, of building sources, of learning the language and the culture, had ended at a security checkpoint?
Ow.
She didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, she walked. Away from the building, down the wide sidewalk, past vendors selling fruit and newspapers. The city smelled like exhaust and street food, and something floral she couldn't identify. Music drifted from an open shop window. 2 children chased each other around a fountain. Sarah's hotel was 6 blocks away. She'd walked this route yesterday, memorizing it, timing it, being prepared. Now each step felt heavier than the last. Halfway there, her phone rang.
Unknown number.
Local area code. She almost didn't answer, but journalists always answer. Hello, silence, then breathing. Then a man's voice, speaking English with an accent she recognized. "Miss Chen, you left something behind?" Sarah stopped walking. A bicycle swerved around her. Someone cursed. She moved to the side, pressing the phone harder against her ear. "Who is this?" "You left behind an opportunity." The voice was calm, almost gentle. "The man you came to meet, he's disappointed. He does not like disappointment." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Then let me do the interview." I removed the microphone. "I'll follow any rules." "The rules have changed." A pause. "Meet me tonight, 10 o'clock. There's a cafe on Merchant Street called the Blue Door. You know it?" She didn't, but she said yes anyway. "Come alone. Bring nothing. No phone, no recording devices. Nothing." Another pause. "If you do this, maybe there is still a chance. Maybe." The line went dead. Sarah stood on the sidewalk, her hand shaking slightly. The phone still pressed to her ear, even though nobody was there anymore. Around her, the city continued its rhythm. Buses rumbled. Vendors called out prices. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. She had a choice to make. Go home. File a report about a failed interview. We'll move on to the next story. Or walk into them. Unknown at 10 o'clock tonight, alone, in a city where journalists sometimes disappeared and nobody asked questions. Sarah thought about her microphone, sealed in a plastic bag, about the guard's words, about the voice on the phone. Then she thought about the story, the truth waiting to be told. She started walking again, this time toward her hotel. She had 7 hours to decide. 7 hours two-way risk against reward? 7 hours to remember why she'd become a journalist in the first place. The sun was already starting to sink lower in the sky. Soon, it would be dark. The hotel room was small and clean. White walls. A single bed with crisp sheets. A window that looked out onto a narrow street below. Sarah sat on the edge of the mattress, her laptop open, staring at a half-written email to her editor. She'd started typing 3 times. Deleted it 3 times. The truth was simple. If she went to this meeting, she'd be breaking every safety protocol she'd ever learned. Never meet unknown sources alone. Always tell someone where you're going. Always have backup. Always have a way out. But the story? God, the story. Sarah closed the laptop. She walked to the window. Below, street vendors were packing up their carts. A man swept the sidewalk in front of a closed shop. Lights were coming on in windows across the street. Normal life. Safe life. Her phone buzzed. Her editor again. Sra, need confirmation. Are we running the piece or not? She typed back quickly, still working on it. Give me until morning. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. Be careful. Those 2 words sat on her screen like a warning. Like a prayer, Sarah looked at the clock. 7:47 p.m., 2 hours and 13 minutes until the meeting. If she was going, if she thought about calling someone, her sister back home, her colleague in London, someone who could talk her out of this. But she knew what they'd say. Don't go. It's not worth it. Come home. Maybe they were right. She pulled out the business card she'd been carrying for 3 weeks. The one she'd received through a friend of a contact. On it, just a name. No title, no phone number. Just a name written in careful handwriting. This was the man she'd come to interview. A man who controlled industries, influenced governments, and operated in shadows most people never saw. A man accused of things Sarah had spent months trying to verify. Corruption, manipulation. Some whispered worse, but nobody had proof. Nobody had testimony. Nobody had his voice on record saying anything that mattered, until maybe tonight. Sarah made her decision. She changed into darker clothes, jeans, a black jacket, running shoes in case she needed to move fast. She left her laptop, her press badge, her American passport in the hotel safe. She kept only local currency and an ID card. No phone. Those were the rules. At 9:30 p.m., she left the hotel through a side entrance. The night air was cooler, but still humid. The streets had transformed. Fewer people. Darker corners. The city showed a different face after sunset. She'd looked up the Blue Door Cafe on a map earlier. Merchant Street was in an older part of the city where buildings leaned close together and alleys twisted like veins. Not a tourist area. Not a safe area. Sarah walked quickly, keeping 2 well-lit streets when possible. A taxi slowed beside her, but she waved it away. Better to arrive on foot. Better to see who might be following. Twice, she thought she heard footsteps behind her. Both times, when she turned, the street was empty. Merchant Street was narrower than she expected. The buildings here were 3 stories tall, with laundry hanging from some windows and dark shops on the ground floors. The cafe sat halfway down the block. Its blue door was exactly as promised. A single bulb hung above it, casting yellow light. Sarah checked her watch. 9:58 p.m. She stood across the street, watching. Through the cafe's window, she could see a few tables. Most were empty. An old man sat in the corner reading a newspaper. A couple shared tea near the window. Everything looked normal. Almost too normal. At exactly 10 p.m., a black car pulled up in front of the cafe. The engine idled. Nobody got out. Sarah's instincts screamed, "Run. Go back. This is wrong." But her feet moved forward. Across the street, toward the blue door. She reached for the handle. Before she could touch it, the door opened from inside. A man stood in the doorway. Not young, not old, clean-shaven, wearing a simple shirt and slacks. His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Miss Chen," he said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "You came alone?" "Yes." "No recording devices?" "No." He studied her face for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. "Come in. Someone is waiting for you." Sarah walked through the door. The cafe smelled like coffee and cardamom. The old man didn't look up from his newspaper. The couple continued their conversation in low voices. The man who'd let her in gestured toward a back hallway. Through there, last door on the right. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She walked down the hallway. The walls were covered in faded photographs of the city from decades ago. The floor creaked under her feet. The last door on the right was closed. No light came from underneath. She knocked once, twice. Enter. A voice said from inside. Deep, commanding. Sarah turned the handle. The door opened into darkness. She couldn't see inside. Couldn't see who had spoken. She stepped forward anyway. The door closed behind her with a soft click. A lock turned. For 3 seconds, Sarah stood in complete darkness. She couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. Then a lamp clicked on. Soft light filled a small room. A desk, 2 chairs. And sitting behind the desk, the man from the business card. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. So, he said, you want the truth. Asterisk. Sarah's voice came out steadier than she felt. I want to hear your side of the story. The man leaned back in his chair. He was older than his photograph suggested. Silver touched his temples. Lines marked his face, deep ones around his eyes and mouth. He wore an expensive watch, but a simple shirt. Power that didn't need to announce itself. My side. He repeated the words slowly, as if tasting them. Do you know how many journalists have said that to me? Do you know how many have sat where you're sitting, promising fairness, promising truth? Sarah didn't answer. She took the chair across from him without being asked. The room was small. No windows. Just the desk, the chairs, the lamp. An ashtray sat empty on the desk's corner. A glass of water beside it. They all wanted something, the man continued. A headline. A villain. A story that would make them famous. He paused. What do you want, Miss Chen? The truth. He smiled again. This time it looked sad. The truth. Such a simple word. Such a complicated thing. He stood up, walking to the corner of the room where a small table held a laptop. He opened it, typed something, then turned the screen toward her. This is what they say about me. His finger pointed to an article. Corrupt businessmen, criminal connections, blood money, he scrolled. And this? Sarah had read them all. She'd written some herself, or versions of them. Carefully worded, allegedly, according to sources. Are they wrong? She asked quietly. The man closed the laptop. He returned to his chair, folding his hands on the desk. Do you know what happened to the last journalist who interviewed me? Really interviewed me, I mean. Not the staged press conferences. A real conversation. Sarah's throat felt dry. She'd heard rumors. A journalist from a German publication? He'd disappeared after publishing an expose. Some said he'd gone into hiding. Others said worse things. He asked the same questions you will ask, the man said. I gave him answers. True answers. But the truth didn't fit the story his editors wanted. So they changed it. They took my words and twisted them until I became the monster they needed me to be. Then why agree to meet me? Because I'm tired. The words came out heavy. I'm tired of the lies. Tired of the game? Tired of being the villain in everyone's story? He looked directly at her. You lost your microphone today. Your insurance? Your evidence. So now we sit here, just 2 people talking, and tomorrow you will go back to your hotel, and you will try to remember everything, I say, and you will wonder if you got it right. Sarah felt her chest tighten. He was right. Without a recording, this entire meeting was just memory, interpretation. He could deny everything later. Why did you cancel the official interview? She asked. I didn't. He let that sit between them. My security team did. They're paid to be paranoid. They saw your microphone and they panicked. By the time I heard about it, you were already gone. He gestured around the small room. So I arranged this instead. Without any proof? Exactly. He leaned forward. Now I'm going to tell you things, Miss Chen. True things, ugly things. Things that will make you question everything you think you know about power and money and how the world really works. And when I'm done, you'll have a choice. You can write your story based on whispers and rumors and what other people have told you, or you can write what I tell you tonight, knowing that without proof, many people won't believe you. Sarah's hands gripped the arms of her chair. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was something else. A test, maybe. Or a trap. I'm listening, she said. The man poured water from a pitcher into the glass on his desk. He didn't offer her any. He drank slowly, then set the glass down with care. 20 years ago, I was nobody, he began. A factory worker. I had a wife and a daughter. We lived in a small apartment. We were happy. His voice was distant now, like he was speaking from far away. Then the government changed. New people came to power. They promised prosperity, progress, a better future. He paused. The lamp flickered slightly. But progress needed funding. They came to businesses like the factory where I worked. They said invest or close. Simple choice. My boss invested. 3 months later, the factory exploded. Gas leak, they said. 47 people died. My wife was one of them. Sarah's breath caught. She hadn't known this. It wasn't in any article she'd read. The investigation was closed quickly. Accident. Tragedy. Move on. The man's hands curled into fists on the desk. But I found documents. Papers my boss tried to destroy. The explosion wasn't an accident. Safety inspections had been skipped. Equipment was faulty. The government inspectors knew. They'd been paid to look away. What did you do? I took those documents to a journalist. A brave one. She published the story. His eyes met Sarah's. 2 days later, she was arrested for defamation. The documents disappeared. I was told to stay quiet, or my daughter would pay the price. The room felt smaller suddenly, warmer, so I stayed quiet. I took my daughter, and we left the city. I worked odd jobs, saved money, learned how things really worked, stood up again, pacing. I learned that in this country, you can't fight power with truth. Truth is too weak, it's too slow. So I learned to use power instead. You became what you hated. He stopped pacing, looked at her. Yes, exactly. I became wealthy through connections and compromises and doing things I'm not proud of. I learned to play the game better than the people who killed my wife. And now, 20 years later, I have more power than any of them. Sarah's mind raced. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm dying. The words hung in the air like smoke. Cancer. 6 months. Maybe 8 if I'm lucky. He sat back down, slower this time. My daughter is grown now, safe, living abroad where they can't touch her. And I realized something, Miss Chen. I spent 20 years becoming powerful enough to protect one person, my child. But in doing so, I became exactly what I fought against. His hand reached into his desk drawer. Sarah tensed. But he pulled out a folder. Plain manila. Old. And here are the original documents from the factory explosion. And more. 20 years of records, names, dates, proof of everything I just told you, and worse. He pushed the folder across the desk. This is what you came for. This is your story. Sarah stared at the folder, but didn't touch it. What's the catch? The man's laugh was quiet and bitter. The catch. There's always a catch, isn't there? He tapped the folder with one finger. If you publish this, people will go to prison. Powerful people. People with friends in government, in courts, in places that matter. They will fight back. They will say the documents are fake. They will come after you with lawyers and worse, and you. I'll be dead before any trial happens. I've made my peace with that. Push the folder closer to Sarah, but you'll be alive. You'll have to live with whatever happens next. Can you do that? Sarah's hand hovered over the folder. Everything she'd worked for was right there. Proof. Evidence. The story that would change everything. But her mind flashed to the journalists who disappeared, to the security guards this morning, to the locked door behind her. "Why me?" she asked. "Why not someone local? Someone who understands the politics here better?" "Because locals know the cost. They have families here, lives that can be destroyed. You're an outsider. You can publish and leave. Go back to your country where they can't easily reach you." He paused. "And because 3 weeks ago, my daughter sent me one of your articles about corruption in Eastern Europe. She said you were different, that you cared about truth more than headlines." Sarah remembered that article. 2 years of work, multiple sources, legal threats from 3 different governments. It had nearly destroyed her career. But it had also exposed a network of corruption that led to actual arrests, actual change. "My daughter said you were brave." The man's voice softened. "She said you reminded her of someone. It took me a while to realize she meant her mother, the woman I lost." Sarah picked up the folder. It was heavier than it looked. She opened it carefully. Inside, photocopies of documents, handwritten notes, photographs of bank transfers, names she recognized from news reports, from political campaigns, from business magazines. This was dynamite. This was career-defining. This was also dangerous as hell. "How do I know this is real?" she asked. "How do I know you're not setting me up?" The man reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. Digital copies. Bank records match. Dates cross-reference with public events. Everything can be verified. I've spent 6 months preparing this, making sure every piece is solid, unshakable. He placed the drive on top of the folder. "But understand something, Miss Chen. These documents expose more than just one factory explosion. They show a pattern. 20 years of the same people, the same corruption, the same lies. Publishing this will crack open something that many powerful individuals want to stay closed." Sarah closed the folder. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. Something had settled inside her. A certainty, a knowing. "I need to ask you something," she said. "The things you did, the compromises, the people you hurt along the way to gain this power, do you regret them?" The man was quiet for a long moment. Outside the room, Sarah could hear muffled voices from the cafe, the clink of cups. Normal life continuing while they sat in this small room discussing things that could topple governments. Every day, he finally said, "But regret doesn't change the past. It just haunts you while you try to fix the future." Sarah stood up, folder and USB drive in hand. "I'll need to verify everything. It will take time. I don't have much time, I know. But I won't publish something I haven't verified. That's not how truth works." The man smiled. This time, it reached his eyes. "My daughter was right about you." He stood as well, extending his hand. "When you publish this, they'll ask where you got it. What will you say?" Sarah shook his hand. His grip was firm despite his age and illness. "A source. That's all. A source who wanted the truth told. They'll pressure you. They'll threaten you. They'll try to discredit you. I know. And you're still going to do it." Sarah thought about the 3 years she'd spent investigating this story. The dead ends and closed doors, and people too afraid to talk. She thought about her microphone, confiscated at a security checkpoint. She thought about all the small compromises that lead to big silences. "Yes," she said. "I'm going to do it." The man walked to the door and unlocked it. Light from the hallway spilled in. "There's a car waiting outside. It will take you back to your hotel safely. Keep those documents hidden. Don't trust hotel safes. Don't leave them anywhere someone might search." Sarah nodded. She tucked the folder under her jacket and put the USB drive in her shoe. Old spy trick, but sometimes the old ways worked best. "One more thing," the man said as she stepped into the hallway. "The guard who confiscated your microphone this morning, the one who canceled the interview, his name is Victor. He's been on their payroll for 15 years. He's mentioned in those documents. Page 47. Sarah stopped. He was protecting them, not you. He was protecting them from you, from what you might discover if you got too close." The man's expression hardened. "They knew you were coming. They've known for weeks. The security checkpoint was a message, a warning. They wanted to scare you off before you found anything real. And why did they let me leave? Because forcibly removing a foreign journalist creates international incidents. Better to intimidate and release. They counted on you giving up and going home. Sarah felt anger bloom in her chest. All of it. The canceled interview. The confiscated equipment. The careful, calculated intimidation. It wasn't random security protocol. It was designed to make her feel small, powerless, afraid. "Thank you," she said to the man, "for trusting me with this. Don't thank me yet. Thank me after you've published it and survived what comes next." He extended his hand one more time. "Good luck, Miss Chen. You're going to need it." Sarah walked down the hallway. Through the cafe, where the old man still read his newspaper and the couple still drank tea. Out the blue door, into the night where, as promised, a black car waited. She got in. The driver didn't speak. He just drove, taking side streets and back alleys, checking mirrors constantly. Sarah held the folder against her chest. Inside it, proof of 20 years of corruption. Inside it, the truth that powerful people had killed to keep hidden. She'd come to this city for an interview. She was leaving with something much bigger. The question was whether she'd survive long enough to tell the story. The hotel room felt different when Sarah returned. Smaller, somehow. More exposed. She locked the door, checked the windows, pulled the curtains shut. Then she sat on the bed with the folder and began to read. 3 hours later, her eyes burned and her hands trembled. Not from fear. From rage, the documents told a story that was worse than she'd imagined. The factory explosion wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern. Over 20 years, safety inspections had been falsified at dozens of facilities. Bribes had been paid. Whistleblowers had been silenced. And when accidents happened, when people died, the same officials covered it up the same way. Page after page of evidence. Bank transfers. Signed memos. Photographs of documents that should have been destroyed but weren't. The man had been thorough, meticulous, every claim backed by proof, and on page 47. Just as he'd said, there was Victor. The guard from the security checkpoint, 15 years of payments. $20,000 a month to look the other way, to report on visiting journalists, to protect the people who'd killed 47 factory workers and walked away free. Sarah's phone buzzed. She'd retrieved it from the hotel safe after returning. A message from an unknown number. The car ride home went smoothly, I hope. Sleep well. Tomorrow, make copies. Many copies. Hide them well. Trust no one. No signature. But she knew who it was from. Sarah spent the next hour scanning documents. She uploaded encrypted files to 3 different cloud services. Emailed copies to her editor with instructions not to open them unless she went silent for more than 48 hours. She made physical copies and hid them in different locations around the room. Inside lamp bases. Under the mattress. Taped behind the bathroom mirror. Paranoid? Maybe. But journalists who weren't paranoid in situations like this didn't stay alive. At 4 a.m., she finally tried to sleep. But every sound made her jump. Footsteps in the hallway. The door closing somewhere above. The elevator dinging. She kept her clothes on and her shoes nearby. When dawn came, gray light filtering through the curtains, Sarah had made her decision. She was leaving. Today, before anyone realized what she had, she packed quickly. Everything essential. She left the room looking exactly as it had when she arrived. Then she took a taxi to the airport, checking behind her the entire way at the ticket counter. She bought a seat on the next flight out. It didn't matter where. Just out away. The flight was to Istanbul. From there, she could get anywhere. In the airport lounge, she opened her laptop and started typing. The article poured out. Everything. The factory explosion. The documents. The pattern of corruption. She didn't name the man who'd given her the information. Just called him a source with direct knowledge. But she named everyone else. Every official, every bribe, every cover dash up, including Victor. The guard who'd confiscated her microphone. The guard who'd been paid to keep journalists like her from getting too close. Her flight was called. Sarah saved the document, backed it up one more time, and boarded the plane. 12 hours later, she landed in London. She'd switched flights twice, used different airlines, paid cash where possible. Basic security protocol. Maybe excessive, but she was alive and she had the story. In a hotel near Heathrow, she finished the article. 3,500 words. Every fact checked against the documents. Every claim backed by evidence. She sent it to her editor with a note. This one's going to cause trouble. But it's solid. Every word. Her editor called within an hour. Sarah, are you sure about this? The people you're naming, they're powerful. They'll come after us, I'm sure. And yes, they will. That's why we need to publish it before they know we have it. A long pause. Then, okay. I trust you. We go live tomorrow morning. Sarah spent that night staring at her laptop, rereading the article, checking facts one more time. At 6 a.m. London time, the article went live. By noon, it had been shared 40,000 times. News outlets in 12 countries had picked it up. Within 18 hours, 3 government officials had resigned. 2 more were arrested. The documents Sarah had published were authenticated by independent investigators. The backlash came swift. Lawsuits, threats, denials, a coordinated campaign to discredit her. But the evidence was too strong. The pattern too clear. Other journalists started digging deeper, finding more victims, more cover dash-ups. 6 weeks after publication, Sarah received a package. No return address. Inside, a handwritten note. My daughter called me crying. She'd read your article. She said her mother would have been proud. Thank you for keeping your promise. Thank you for being brave. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. But the truth will remain. That's all that matters. It was unsigned. But Sarah knew who it was from. She learned later, through a contact in the region, that the man had passed away quietly in a hospital. Alone. No funeral. No obituary. Just another death in a country where people died and were forgotten. But he hadn't been forgotten. Not really. Because the truth he'd helped expose led to reforms, new safety regulations, independent investigations into other factories, compensation for families who'd lost loved ones. Small changes, slow changes. But real ones? Sarah kept the note. She kept it in a frame on her desk, next to her press badge. A reminder of what journalism could be at its best. A reminder of the cost of truth and the price of silence. Sometimes, late at night, she thought about that morning at the security checkpoint. About the guard confiscating her microphone. About the canceled interview that led to something bigger than any interview. Could have been. She thought about how losing the microphone, losing the official access, losing the controlled narrative, had actually freed her to find the real story. The one that mattered. The one that changed things. And she thought about the man in the small room with the folder full of evidence. A man who'd become a monster to fight monsters. A man who'd spent his final months trying to undo the damage he'd caused. Was he a villain or a hero? Sarah didn't know. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe he was just human, like everyone else, trying to do the right thing in a world that made the right thing impossibly hard. The story ran in major publications around the world. Sarah won awards for it. International recognition. Job offers from bigger networks. But the thing she was most proud of was a message she received 6 months after publication. From a woman living abroad, the man's daughter. Thank you for telling my father's story. Thank you for not making him a monster or a saint. Just a person who tried in the end to do something right. My mother would have liked you. I think my father did too. Sarah saved that message. Read it when the threats got bad. When lawyers sent intimidating letters, when people questioned her methods or her sources or her right to tell the story, because in the end, that's what journalism was supposed to be. Telling stories that needed to be told. Giving voice to truth when silence was easier. Taking risks when safety was tempting. The guard at the security checkpoint, Victor, was eventually convicted of corruption. He served 3 years in prison. Sarah never spoke to him, never interviewed him. Some stories didn't need every perspective. Some people had forfeited their right to explanation. The folder of documents stayed with Sarah. She kept it locked in a safe. Evidence, history, a reminder that truth was fragile and powerful at the same time. In the microphone, the one confiscated that morning, she never got it back. It sat somewhere in a security office, forgotten and irrelevant, because in the end, she hadn't needed it. The truth had found its way out without recording devices or official interviews or controlled conditions. Sometimes truth just needed someone brave enough to carry it into the light. And Sarah had been that person. Scared, uncertain, but brave enough. That was the moment everything changed. Not when the guard confiscated the microphone, not when the interview was canceled, but when Sarah made the choice to keep going, to meet a stranger at a cafe with a blue door, to take the risk, to tell the story. That was the moment that mattered. That was the moment that changed everything.